Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair on the bridge of the USS Endeavour. The stars outside looked the same as always, cold, distant, and quiet. He had been commanding this ship for 3 years now, and most days were just like this one. Boring patrol runs along the edge of human space, checking for problems that never came. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. His crew of 847 people were going about their daily work. Some were fixing engines, others were studying star charts, and a few were probably sleeping in their bunks. It was a normal day in space. Lisa Carter sat at her station, listening to radio signals from across the galaxy. Most of the time, she heard nothing but static and the natural sounds that stars make. She wore headphones and watched screens full of numbers that showed different frequencies. Her job was to listen for anything unusual. "Captain," Lisa said suddenly, her voice cutting through the quiet bridge. "I'm getting something strange here." Jake turned to look at her. "What kind of strange?" Lisa frowned at her screens. "It's a signal, but not like anything I've ever heard before. The patterns are different, mathematical, but not human math." Dr. Alex Hughes looked up from his desk near the back of the bridge. He was the ship's expert on languages and communication. His job was to understand how different groups of people talk to each other. "Can you put it on the main speakers?" Lisa pressed some buttons and suddenly the bridge filled with an odd sound. It wasn't music, but it wasn't just noise either. It had a rhythm, like someone was trying to say something important. The sound rose and fell in patterns that seemed almost like a song. "That's beautiful," said someone from the back of the bridge. Alex was already working at his computer, trying to break down the signal into parts he could understand. "Lisa, how long has this been broadcasting?" "The computer says it's been traveling through space for about 200 years, maybe more." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. 200 years? That means whatever sent this is far away. Very far away. Alex nodded, still working. "And Captain, I don't think this signal is from humans. The mathematical patterns are too different. Someone else made this." The bridge went quiet except for the strange signal. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If aliens existed and if they were trying to communicate, this could be the most important day in human history. "Can you figure out what it says?" Jake asked. Alex spent the next 4 hours working on the signal. He used every computer program the ship had for understanding languages. Slowly, piece by piece, he began to understand what the alien message was trying to say. "Captain," Alex said finally, his voice shaking a little, "I think I know what this is. It's a distress call." Jake stood up from his chair. "You mean they're asking for help?" "Yes, but not just asking. They're begging." The signal repeats the same basic message over and over. It says something like, "Help us and we are dying," and "Please anyone respond." Lisa looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up more details about where this came from. The signal originated from a star system about 6 months away at maximum speed." Jake walked over to the big star chart on the wall of the bridge. He found the area Lisa was talking about. It was far beyond any place humans had ever traveled. It was in a part of space they had never even looked at closely. "Alex, can you tell me anything else about who sent this?" Alex looked at his notes. "They call themselves the Zelani. From what I can understand, they're an old race, much older than humans. The signal talks about their homeworld being attacked by something they call the Devourers." Devourers. Something that eats planets, Captain. Or at least that's what it sounds like. The Zelani seem to be saying that these Devourers have been destroying their world for years and they're running out of time. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting to see what he would do. He thought about Earth Command and their orders to stay within human space. He thought about the 800 people on his ship who trusted him to keep them safe. But he also thought about the desperate voice in that alien signal. Someone out there was dying, and they had been calling for help for 200 years. No one had answered. "Lisa, send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them what we found." Lisa worked at her station for a few minutes, then looked up. "Message sent, Captain. But it will take 3 days to reach Earth and 3 more days to get a reply." Jake nodded. That was the problem with space travel. Everything took so long. By the time Earth Command told him what to do, it might be too late for the Zelani. He made his decision. "Kate Sullivan," he called to his chief engineer over the intercom. "I need you on the bridge." Kate arrived 5 minutes later. She was a small woman with grease on her hands and a serious expression. "What do you need, Captain?" "Kate, can this ship make a trip to an unknown star system 6 months away?" Kate thought for a moment. It would be dangerous. We'd have to push the engines harder than they've ever been pushed. We'd use up most of our fuel. And if anything went wrong, we'd be too far from home for anyone to help us. But can we do it? Yes, sir. We can do it. Jake looked around the bridge one more time. Ryan Bell, prepare all weapon systems. We don't know what we're going to find out there. Ryan Bell was the ship's tactical officer. He was young but smart, and Jake trusted him to handle the ship's weapons. Yes, sir. Should I tell the crew what we're doing? Jake pressed a button that would let him talk to everyone on the ship. Attention, crew of the Endeavor. This is your captain. We have received a distress signal from an alien race called the Zilani. They have been calling for help for 200 years and no one has answered. Today that changes. We are going to answer their call. He paused, letting his words sink in. This will be dangerous. We will be traveling farther from Earth than any human ship has ever gone. We may not come back, but someone out there is dying and they need our help. If anyone wants to leave the ship, we can drop you off at the nearest space station. No questions asked, no shame in leaving. Jake waited. No one moved. No one asked to leave. Very well. Kate set course for the Zilani system, maximum speed. The Endeavor turned away from Earth and pointed toward the unknown. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, Jake wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or if he was about to make history. Either way, humanity was going to answer the call. 3 months into their journey, the USS Endeavor was showing signs of wear. Kate Sullivan spent most of her time in the engine room, fixing problems that kept appearing. The ship was working harder than it was designed to work, and parts were breaking down faster than usual. Captain, Kate said over the intercom, we've got another coolant leak in Engine 3. I can fix it, but we're running low on spare parts. Jake Morrison rubbed his forehead. Every day brought new problems. How much longer can we keep this up? Maybe 3 more months if we're lucky. Maybe less if we're not. The crew was getting tired too. Grace Parker, the ship's medical officer, had been treating more and more people for headaches, trouble sleeping, and general worry. Being so far from home was hard on everyone. Dr. Parker, to the bridge, Jake called. Grace arrived a few minutes later. She was a calm woman in her 40s who had seen a lot of difficult situations. Captain, if you're asking about the crew's health, I'll be honest with you. People are scared. We're farther from Earth than anyone has ever been, and we still have months to go. Are they talking about turning back? Some are, but most want to keep going. They believe in what we're doing. Jake nodded. He was proud of his crew, but he worried about them too. Leading people into danger was the hardest part of being a captain. Dr. Alex Hughes had been working non-stop on the Zilani signal. Every day he learned more about their language and culture. What he was discovering amazed him. Captain, you need to hear this, Alex said, calling Jake over to his station. I've been able to decode more of their message. The Zilani aren't just asking for help. They're offering something in return. What kind of something? Alex pulled up his notes on the computer screen. They mention a great library. From what I can understand, they've been collecting knowledge from across the galaxy for millions of years. Art, science, history, philosophy. They have the recorded wisdom of hundreds of different alien races. Jake stared at the screen. You mean other aliens besides the Zilani? Yes, but most of them are extinct now. The Zilani have been the keepers of galactic knowledge for a very long time. If we save them, they're offering to share all of that with humanity. Lisa Carter looked up from her communication station. Captain, we've got a problem. I'm detecting ships following us. Jake felt his stomach drop. How many ships? At least 5, maybe more. They're staying far back, but they're definitely following our course. Ryan Bell immediately started working at his weapons station. Should I prepare for combat, Captain? Not yet. Can you tell who they are, Lisa? Lisa worked at her controls, trying to get more information about the unknown ships. I can't identify them, sir. They're not broadcasting any signals I recognize. But, Captain, they're fast. Faster than us. Jake made a decision. Sam Torres, plot a course through the Keller asteroid field. Sam Torres was the ship's navigator. He was good at finding safe paths through dangerous areas of space. Sir, that field is full of rocks and debris. It'll slow us down. That's what I'm hoping for. If those ships are following us, maybe we can lose them in the asteroids. The next 2 days were tense as the Endeavor moved carefully through the asteroid field. Rocks the size of buildings floated past the ship. Some were so close that the crew could see them scraping against the hull. Kate Sullivan worked around the clock to keep the engines running smoothly. One wrong move could send them crashing into an asteroid. "Captain," Sam said from his navigation station, "I think we lost them. I'm not seeing any ships behind us anymore." But he was wrong. The unknown ships appeared again a week later, and this time they were closer. Lisa could see them clearly on her screens. "Captain, they're trying to communicate with us," Jake thought for a moment. "Put them on the main screen." The bridge's main viewing screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that was definitely not human. The creature had gray skin and large black eyes. Its mouth moved in ways that seemed strange, but Alex's computer was able to translate its words. "Human vessel," the alien said. "You are traveling to assist the Zilani." Jake stepped forward. "Yes, we are." "Who are you?" "We are servants of the Devourers. The Zilani sent their distress signal long ago. No one answered because the Zilani are already dead." Alex worked quickly at his station. "Captain, the translation might not be perfect, but I think they're saying the Zilani died out decades ago." The alien on the screen continued speaking. "Your species is new to this galaxy. You do not understand the power of the Devourers. They consume entire worlds. They have done this for thousands of years. The Zilani were consumed long ago. You travel to save ghosts." Jake felt anger building inside him. "If the Zilani are dead, why are you following us?" "Because you answered their call. This makes you dangerous to the Devourers. Dangerous ideas spread. Other species might think they can resist. They cannot. No one can." Ryan Bell looked at Jake, his hand hovering over the weapons controls. Jake shook his head slightly. "Not yet. We're going to continue to the Zilani system," Jake said to the alien. "If they're really dead, we'll see for ourselves." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You will see. And then you will understand. The galaxy belongs to the Devourers now. Your species will learn this as all species learn it." The communication ended, and the screen went back to showing stars. "Captain," Ryan said, "those ships are still following us, but they're keeping their distance." Jake nodded. "They want us to reach the Zilani system. They want us to see what the Devourers have done." Grace Parker spoke up from the back of the bridge. "Captain, maybe we should consider that they might be telling the truth. Maybe the Zilani really are dead." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all scared, but they were still with him. "Dr. Hughes, is there any way to tell if the Zilani signal is old or new?" Alex worked at his computer for several minutes. "The signal has some background noise that suggests it's been broadcasting for a long time. But Captain, there are parts of the signal that seem fresher, like they've been updated recently." "Updated how?" "Small changes in the mathematical patterns. New words added to their language. It's like someone has been maintaining the signal, keeping it current." Lisa suddenly sat up straight at her station. "Captain, I'm getting something new. Another signal, much weaker than the first one." "From the Zilani system?" "Yes, sir. And Captain, this one is definitely recent. It was sent less than a month ago." Alex quickly started working on the new signal. After an hour, he looked up with excitement in his eyes. "Captain, it's from the Zilani. They're still alive. Not many of them, but some survived. They're hiding underground, and they say the Devourers are still consuming their planet." Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. Then we're not too late. He activated the ship-wide communication system. "Attention, crew of the Endeavor. We have confirmed that the Zilani are still alive. We are going to save them." The unknown ships continued to follow them, but Jake didn't care anymore. The Zilani were alive, and humanity was coming to help them. 3 months later, the Endeavor reached the edge of the Zilani star system. What they saw there would change everything. The first thing Jake Morrison saw when they arrived at the Zilani system was destruction. The planet that should have been beautiful was covered in massive metal structures. Giant machines crawled across the surface like mechanical spiders, tearing up the ground and loading it onto huge ships. "My God," whispered Lisa Carter from her communication station. Nicole Davis, who operated the ship's scanning equipment, was reading her instruments with growing horror. "Captain, those machines are strip mining the entire planet. They're taking everything, the soil, the rocks, even the water." Jake stared at the main screen. He could see what had once been oceans, now just empty basins with mechanical harvesters scraping up the last bits of mud. Forests were gone, replaced by metal towers that stretched up into the sky. The planet looked like it was being eaten alive. "How long have they been doing this?" Jake asked. "Based on the level of destruction," Nicole said, "I'd guess at least 50 years, maybe more." Dr. Alex Hughes was working frantically at his station, scanning for any signs of the Zilani. Captain, I'm not detecting any life on the surface. But wait, he adjusted his controls. There's something underground. Deep underground. Very faint, but it looks like artificial structures. Life signs? Maybe. It's hard to tell with all the interference from those machines. Carlos Martinez, the ship's security chief, stepped forward. He was a big man who had served in Earth's military before joining the space service. Captain, if there are Zilani down there, we need to get to them fast. Those Devourer ships we saw following us are going to be here soon. Jake nodded. The alien ships had been staying back, but they were definitely still out there. Carlos put together a landing team. Take our best people. Sir, those machines might attack us the moment we land. Then we'll have to be fast. Ryan Bell was monitoring the space around them from his tactical station. Captain, I'm detecting at least 20 Devourer ships in this system. Most of them are busy loading materials from the planet, but some are starting to move toward us. Jake made his decision quickly. Ryan, target the nearest harvesting ship. Maybe if we can get their attention, it will buy our landing team some time. Yes, sir. The Endeavor's weapons fired, hitting one of the large ships that was carrying materials away from the planet. The ship didn't explode, but it stopped moving and began to drift. Immediately, alarms started going off on the bridge. Nicole was reading multiple new contacts on her screens. Captain, every Devourer ship in the system is now moving toward us. Good, Carlos. Get down to that planet now while they're focused on us. Carlos took a team of 12 people in the ship's fastest shuttle. Dr. Hughes went with them to help communicate with any Zilani they might find. Grace Parker also joined the team, in case they found injured survivors. The shuttle headed for the surface while the Endeavor began fighting the approaching Devourer ships. The battle was intense but short. The human ship was outnumbered, but Ryan Bell was clever with his tactics. Instead of trying to win, he focused on keeping the Devourer ships busy and away from the landing party. On the planet's surface, Carlos led his team through the ruins of what had once been a great city. Broken buildings reached up toward the sky like the bones of some giant creature. The air was full of dust and the sound of distant machinery. This way, Alex said, following signals from his scanner. The underground structures are about 2 miles from here. They found an entrance hidden beneath the rubble of a collapsed building. Carlos used explosives to clear away the debris, revealing stairs that led down into darkness. The tunnels below were different from the destruction above. Here the walls were covered in beautiful artwork and writing that seemed to glow with its own light. Alex was amazed by what he saw. These writings, he said, stopping to examine the walls. They're like nothing I've ever seen. Poetry, mathematics, philosophy, all combined into something beautiful. They followed the tunnels deeper underground until they came to a large chamber filled with soft, glowing light, and there, waiting for them, were the Zilani. Jake had expected them to look like the gray aliens who had followed their ship. Instead, the Zilani were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and large, kind eyes. They moved slowly as if they were very old or very tired. One of them stepped forward and began to speak. Alex's translation computer worked to convert their words into English. You came, the Zilani said, and Alex could hear the wonder in their voice even through the computer translation. After so long, someone finally came. Grace Parker immediately began examining the Zilani. There were only about 200 of them left, and many were sick or injured. They had been living underground for decades, slowly dying as their world was consumed above them. The Zilani who had spoken first introduced himself as Wisdom Keeper Veltara. He was their leader and the guardian of their great library. We have waited so long, Veltara said to Alex. We sent our signal into space hoping that someone, somewhere, would care enough to answer. We're here to help, Alex replied through his translator. My people, the humans, we want to get you away from this place. Veltara's large eyes seemed to fill with tears. You would do this for us? But you do not even know us. Someone was asking for help. That's enough. Veltara led them deeper into the underground complex, showing them the great library of the Zilani. It was incredible, millions of books, art pieces, and data storage devices containing the knowledge of hundreds of alien civilizations that had died out over the millennia. This is why we could not leave, Veltara explained. This knowledge belongs to the galaxy. If we abandoned it, countless years of wisdom and beauty would be lost forever. Carlos was getting nervous. Dr. Hughes, we need to get these people back to the ship. The captain can't hold off those devourer ships forever. But as they prepared to leave, Veltara showed them something that changed everything. In the deepest part of the library was a room full of strange, glowing crystals. Veltara explained that these were power sources more advanced than anything humans had ever seen. These crystals have powered our civilization for millions of years, Veltara said, but we are too few and too weak to use them as weapons. However, if your people combined these with your own technology, Alex understood immediately. You're talking about weapons that could fight the Devourers. Yes. For the first time in our history, we might have a chance to fight back. Grace Parker had finished examining the Zilani survivors. Carlos, most of these people are too weak to make the trip to our ship. And even if we could get them there, the Endeavor doesn't have room for 200 passengers. Carlos thought for a moment. What if we don't leave? What if we make our stand here? He contacted Jake on the ship. Captain, we found the Zilani, and they have technology that might help us fight the Devourers. But we can't evacuate them. I recommend we bring the ship down and fight from the surface. Jake's voice crackled over the radio. Carlos, we can't land the Endeavor on a planet. She's too big for atmospheric flight. Then we make our stand here, sir. The Zilani have weapons technology that could turn the tide of this war. Above them, the battle continued. The Endeavor was taking damage, but she was still fighting. Jake had to make another impossible decision. All right, Carlos. Kate Sullivan is going to bring down our weapon systems and engineering teams. If we're going to fight the Devourers, we're going to need every advantage we can get. As Kate led teams of engineers and weapons specialists down to the planet, the real battle was about to begin. Humanity and the Zilani were going to make their stand together, fighting an enemy that had never been defeated. The Devourers had been consuming the galaxy for thousands of years. But they had never faced anything like human determination, combined with Zilani technology. The fight for Zilara Prime was about to show the galaxy something new. Kate Sullivan had never worked so fast in her life. She and her team of engineers were in the Zilani underground chambers, trying to connect human weapon systems to alien power crystals. The crystals were beautiful, glowing with a soft blue light, but they were also incredibly complex. These power sources are amazing, Kate said to Dr. Hughes, who was helping translate the Zilani technical manuals. They produce more energy than our entire ship's reactor, but they're no bigger than my fist. Above them, the USS Endeavor was still fighting Devourer ships in space. Jake Morrison could hear the reports coming in from his crew. The ship was taking damage, but they were managing to keep the enemy busy. Captain, Ryan Bell said from his tactical station, I count at least 30 Devourer ships now. They're not just trying to stop us anymore. They're bringing in reinforcements. How long can we hold them? Maybe an hour, sir. Our weapons are working, but there are just too many of them. On the planet's surface, Carlos Martinez was organizing the defense of the Zilani chambers. He had positioned his security teams at all the tunnel entrances, but he knew they couldn't hold off a ground assault for long. Grace Parker was working with the Zilani to treat injured humans and aliens alike. The Zilani medical knowledge was different from human medicine, but it was incredibly advanced. These people have been healing without surgery for millions of years, Grace told Carlos over the radio. Their medical techniques could revolutionize how we treat injuries, but there wasn't time to learn about Zilani medicine. The battle was coming to them. Wisdom Keeper Veltara approached Carlos with something in his hands. It looked like a human rifle, but it was glowing with the same blue light as the power crystals. Your engineer Kate and our technicians have created something new, Veltara said through Alex's translator, a weapon that combines your technology with ours. Carlos took the weapon and was surprised by how light it was. How does it work? Point and fire, just like your normal weapons. But this one will cut through Devourer armor like it is made of paper. Kate's voice came over the radio. Carlos, we've got 12 of those rifles ready and we're working on more. But I've got an idea for something bigger. What kind of bigger? The Zilani have these power crystals connected to their main computer system. If I can link our ship's weapons to their network, we might be able to create a weapon more powerful than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Jake's voice cut in from space. Kate, how long do you need? Give me 20 minutes, Captain. You might not have 20 minutes. The Devourers are sending ships to the surface. Carlos looked around at his small team of security officers. They had 12 new alien weapons and whatever courage they could find inside themselves. It would have to be enough. The first Devourer ships landed near the ruined city above them. Carlos watched on his scanner as hundreds of mechanical soldiers began marching toward the tunnel entrances. "Here they come," he said over the radio. The Devourer's soldiers were not like anything the humans had seen before. They were tall metal creatures that moved with perfect coordination. They didn't speak or make any sound except for the mechanical whir of their joints. Carlos and his team opened fire as soon as the first Devourers entered the tunnels. The new weapons worked exactly as Veltara had promised. The blue energy beams cut through the metal soldiers like they were made of cardboard, but there were so many of them. "Fall back to the second checkpoint," Carlos ordered. His team moved deeper into the tunnels, fighting as they went. In the main chamber, Kate was working frantically to connect the ship's weapons to the Zalani computer system. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also completely different from anything humans had built. "Almost got it," she muttered, sweat dripping from her forehead as she worked. Above them in space, the Endeavor was in serious trouble. The ship had taken hits to several important systems, and Jake could see that they were outnumbered 10-1. "Captain," Nicole Davis said from her scanning station, "I'm reading massive power buildups from the larger Devourer ships. I think they're preparing to destroy the planet." Jake felt ice in his stomach. "They're going to kill everyone down there just to stop us?" "It looks that way, sir." Jake made another impossible decision. All remaining power to engines. "We're going down there." "Sir," Ryan Bell said, "the Endeavor can't land on a planet. We're too big. We're not landing, Ryan. We're crashing. Right into the biggest Devourer ship we can find." The bridge went quiet for a moment as everyone understood what Jake was saying. He was going to sacrifice the ship and everyone on it to buy more time for the people on the ground. "Captain," Lisa Carter said softly, "there might be another way." "What do you mean?" Lisa had been listening to Devourer communications during the battle. "Sir, I don't think they understand us. They're machines, right? They think in patterns and logic. But everything we've done today has been illogical." Alex Hughes looked up from his work with the Zalani translation systems. "Lisa's right, Captain. We answered a distress call from people we'd never met. We traveled 6 months into unknown space. We're fighting an enemy we can't beat." "None of it makes logical sense," Jake began to understand. "You're saying we should be more unpredictable?" "Exactly. These Devourers have been winning for thousands of years because every species they fight uses logical tactics. But humans don't always do the logical thing." Jake smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Ryan, I want you to do something crazy." "What kind of crazy, sir?" "Attack their biggest ship with everything we have. Then run away. Then attack a different ship. Then run away again. Keep changing targets randomly. Don't follow any pattern they can predict." Ryan's fingers flew over his controls. The Endeavor suddenly changed course and attacked the largest Devourer ship with all weapons. Just as the enemy began to respond, the human ship spun around and attacked a completely different target on the other side of the battle area. The Devourer ships began to act confused. Their perfect coordination started to break down as they tried to predict what the humans would do next. On the planet, Carlos was using the same tactics against the mechanical soldiers. Instead of falling back in an organized way, his team started moving randomly through the tunnels. Sometimes they attacked, sometimes they retreated, sometimes they hid and let the enemy pass by. The Devourer soldiers, programmed for logical warfare, couldn't handle the chaos. "Kate," Carlos called over the radio, "whatever you're doing, do it faster. We're running out of tunnels to run through." "Almost there," Kate replied. She had finally figured out how to connect human and Zalani technology. "Everyone get ready. This is either going to work perfectly, or it's going to blow up the entire underground complex." She pressed the final connection into place. The power crystals throughout the Zalani chambers began to glow brighter. Energy flowed through systems that had been dormant for decades, connecting to the Endeavor's weapon systems in space. "Captain," Kate said over the radio, "fire everything you have at the Devourer mothership. Right now." Jake didn't hesitate. "Ryan, full power to all weapons. Target the biggest ship." The Endeavor's weapons fired, but this time they were powered by Zalani crystals that had been storing energy for millions of years. The beam that hit the Devourer mothership was brighter than a star. The massive enemy vessel, which had seemed invincible just moments before, simply disappeared in a flash of light. The remaining Devourer ships stopped moving. For the first time in thousands of years, They had seen one of their motherships destroyed. Their mechanical minds couldn't process what had happened. Carlos and his team used the confusion to push back through the tunnels, driving the remaining Devourer soldiers toward the surface. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The energy discharge had overloaded many of the Endeavor's systems. Kate Sullivan had been standing too close to the main power coupling when it overloaded. Medical emergency and engineering. Someone called over the radio. Grace Parker ran to help, but it was too late. Kate had given her life to create the weapon that saved Zilara Prime. As the surviving Devourer ships retreated into space, Jake Morrison stood in the underground chambers with the surviving Zilani. They had won their first battle, but Jake knew this was just the beginning. Word of humanity's victory would spread across the galaxy. Other species would learn that the Devourers could be defeated. The question now was, what would they do with that knowledge? 6 months after the battle at Zilara Prime, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a ship he barely recognized. The USS Endeavor had been rebuilt with Zilani technology, making it faster and more powerful than any human ship that had ever existed. But more importantly, it was no longer alone. Around them flew ships from a dozen different alien species. Some looked like birds made of metal, others like floating crystals that sparkled in the starlight. Each species had been hiding from the Devourers for generations, but news of humanity's victory had given them hope. "Captain," Lisa Carter said from her communication station, "we're receiving another distress signal." Jake smiled. In the past 6 months, they had received 47 distress signals from different parts of the galaxy. Some were old signals like the original Zilani message, but others were new, species that had learned they could ask for help, and someone might actually answer. "Where is this one coming from?" Jake asked. "The Altair system, about 2 weeks away at maximum speed." Dr. Alex Hughes, now the head of the new Galactic Translation Center, was already working to decode the message. "It's from a species called the Karathi. They say their homeworld is under attack by, let me see, something they called the Metal Storm. Devourers. Most likely a different name for the same enemy." Jake looked at the tactical display showing their current fleet. Besides the Endeavor, they now had ships from the Zilani, the crystal beings called the Luminari, the bird-like Ethrons, and several other species. Each ship brought unique technology and abilities to their growing alliance. Communications send a message to all ships in the fleet. "We have a new mission." The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Every species in their alliance had lost worlds to the Devourers. Every species wanted revenge, but more importantly, they all wanted to save others from the same fate they had suffered. Admiral Jake Morrison, he had been promoted after Earth finally, acknowledged what he had accomplished. Activated the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Admiral Morrison. To all ships of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, we have received a distress call from the Karathi system. As always, we will answer that call. Prepare for jump to faster than light speed." The fleet moved as one, jumping through space toward another impossible rescue mission. On Earth, people were still trying to understand what had happened. Jake's original mission of disobedience had turned into humanity's entry onto the galactic stage as leaders of a growing resistance movement. Emma Clark, who had been the Endeavor's best pilot, now commanded an entire squadron of human ships. Each one was crewed by volunteers who had heard the story of the Zilani rescue and wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. "Admiral," Emma called over the radio from her flagship, "the Karathi system is heavily defended by Devourer forces. I count at least 50 enemy ships." "Understood, Emma. Begin the Morrison maneuver." The Morrison maneuver had become famous throughout the galaxy. Instead of attacking in organized formations like every other species had tried for thousands of years, the Alliance ships would attack randomly, unpredictably, and with apparent chaos that drove the logical Devourer minds into confusion. Jake had learned that the Devourers were like a computer program. They could handle expected inputs, but random and illogical actions caused them to malfunction. As the fleet engaged the Devourer ships, Jake received a message from the planet below. Carlos Martinez, now the Alliance's head of ground operations, was leading a rescue mission to the Karathi homeworld. "Admiral, we've found them. The Karathi are still alive, but they're in bad shape. They've been fighting the Devourers for 2 years with primitive weapons. Can you evacuate them?" "That's the interesting part, sir. They don't want to be evacuated. They want to join the Alliance and help us save other worlds. Jake wasn't surprised. Every species they had rescued so far had made the same choice. No one wanted to run away anymore. For the first time in galactic history, species were choosing to fight back instead of hide. The battle in space was going well. The Devourer ships were retreating, confused by the Alliance's chaotic tactics. But Jake knew they would be back with more ships and new strategies. Dr. Hughes had been studying captured Devourer technology for months, trying to understand how their enemy thought and operated. His discoveries had been disturbing. "Admiral," Alex said over the intercom, "I need to brief you on what we've learned about the Devourers." Jake listened as Alex explained that the Devourers were not just conquering the galaxy. They were preparing it for something else. The resources they collected, the worlds they consumed, it was all being sent somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy. "They're not the real enemy," Alex concluded. "They're just workers preparing the galaxy for whoever or whatever created them." "How long do we have?" "Based on their current rate of consumption, maybe 50 years before they finish harvesting everything and their masters arrive." Jake felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. It wasn't enough to just fight the Devourers. Humanity and its allies would need to prepare for an even greater threat. But first, they had to save the galaxy from the threat they could see. Over the next 2 years, the Galactic Liberation Alliance grew from a handful of ships to a massive fleet that included hundreds of species. Jake found himself commanding not just ships but entire civilizations that looked to humanity for leadership. "Why us?" Jake asked Wisdom Keeper Veltara during one of their planning meetings. "Why do all these species follow humans?" The ancient Zalani considered the question carefully before answering through the translation system. "Because you answered a call for help from strangers," Veltara said. "For millions of years, species in this galaxy have learned to hide when they are in trouble. But humans do something different. When you hear someone calling for help, you answer, even when it is dangerous, even when it seems impossible." Jake nodded, understanding. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their willingness to help others even at great cost to themselves. The Alliance had freed 37 worlds from Devourer control. They had rescued species that had been hiding for centuries. They had turned a galaxy of frightened survivors into a unified force ready to fight for their freedom. But Jake knew the real test was still coming. "Lisa," he said to his communication officer, "send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need every ship they can spare, every volunteer who wants to make a difference." "What should I tell them this is for, Admiral?" Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about all the species counting on them. All the worlds that still needed to be saved, and the unknown threat that was coming from beyond the galaxy. "Tell them we're going to save the galaxy, and we're going to need all the help we can get." As the Endeavor led its massive fleet toward their next mission, Jake Morrison reflected on how much had changed since that day they first heard the Zalani distress signal. He had been a simple ship captain following orders. Now he was the leader of a galactic alliance, commanding resources and technology that he could never have imagined. But the most important thing hadn't changed at all. When someone called for help in the darkness of space, humanity would always answer. The day a distress signal summoned humanity had become the day the galaxy learned to hope again. And somewhere in the vast emptiness between the stars, new distress signals were being broadcast by species that had learned an important truth. When you call for help, someone will come, someone will always come.